There's a silence most men don't talk about. It comes in the mornings, after the messages stop, after the warmth fades, after the familiar laughter disappears into memory. You reach for your phone by instinct. You scroll, hesitate, maybe even type out a message. Then you backspace. You already know how that ends. You used to wake up feeling connected. Now, you wake up negotiating your own worth. There's something brutal about that kind of stillness, not because it's loud, but because it reminds you just how empty the wrong woman can leave a man who gave too much, too soon, too often. But here's the truth that most men don't want to say out loud. You didn't lose her in one moment. You lost her in 1,000 small ones. Each time you reached out from need instead of strength. Each time you gave more than what was earned. Each time you made her comfort more important than your own clarity. And that's not weakness. That's humanity. But if you're here now, it means you're ready to stop bleeding value into people who don't respect it. You're done texting to be chosen. Now you text to lead. This isn't about games or reverse psychology. It's about presence. It's about reclaiming your emotional authority. Because the way you start your day says everything about the man you are becoming. The right message isn't just words. It's a signal. It doesn't beg for attention. It radiates confidence. It doesn't try to be clever. It creates curiosity. And above all, it doesn't chase. A man grounded in his mission doesn't text from loneliness. He texts from center, from intention, from overflow. So what if, instead of asking her to remember you, you became the kind of man she couldn't forget? That's what this is about. Today, I'm not giving you lines to win her back. I'm giving you 7 ways to win yourself back. Through the way you speak, the way you lead, and yes, even the way you text. Each message is a mirror. Each one reflects the man you're choosing to be now. Let's begin. You stopped texting from need, and now you lead with presence. And that starts with questions so simple, yet so quietly powerful, it shifts the entire tone of your day. If you could wake up anywhere tomorrow, where would you be? Sometimes the most powerful way to connect isn't through intensity, but through imagination. While most men begin their mornings with generic texts, hoping to spark connection through repetition, the high-value man moves differently. He doesn't reach out to be remembered. He speaks in a way that makes space for her to wonder about you, about herself, about the moment that lives quietly between you. This question may look simple on the surface, but beneath it lies something potent. It unlocks her emotional landscape without demanding anything in return. You're not asking for her affection. You're not proving your worth. You're offering a doorway into possibility, into curiosity, into subtle remembrance. Psychologically, it lands because it's not about you. It's about her dreams, her desires, her internal world. And yet, you become the one who opened that door. And in doing so, you become part of the world she builds inside her mind. You give her a mental experience, one attached to freedom, safety, and ease, all connected to your voice. That's emotional power, not because it controls, but because it guides. And the most important part, you don't follow up. You don't explain. You don't chase the answer. You release the question like a stone into still water, and you let the ripple speak for you. Because your role is not to impress her. Your role is to remind her, gently, without pressure, that your presence lingers. That even after distance, you still speak in a way that reaches her quietly, beneath the noise. That's what separates boys who text for attention and men who communicate from composure. In this, you demonstrate emotional restraint. You prove that you can stir something deep without needing to grasp at it. You don't ask her to feel something. You allow her to. That's the core of Stoic Masculinity. Not hiding your emotion, but expressing it with discipline and purpose. And when you send a message like this, you're not just texting, you're leading. Softly, silently, powerfully. Now, let's build on that energy. You've given her the space to imagine the future. Now, in the next message, you remind her of something she's already felt, but may have forgotten. Now that you've opened space for her imagination to wander, it's time to bring her back, just for a moment, to something she once felt, not by asking for it, but by honoring it. We move from the future back to a memory. Woke up thinking about that conversation we had, about driving west and never looking back. There's a kind of memory that doesn't ask for permission. It just returns, suddenly, quietly, like a song you didn't know you missed. This message leans into that space, not with desperation, not to reopen a wound, but simply to say, I remember, and there's dignity in that. Most men bring up the past, hoping to revive it. They're trying to make her feel what they felt, to rewind the clock. But that's not what this message does. Because a high-value man never tries to relive what's gone. He honors it, then keeps walking. You're not asking her if she still thinks about it. You're not pleading for her to agree. You're not framing it as a loss. You're anchoring it as something real, something quiet, something that didn't need to last forever in order to matter. That's a different kind of strength. It's the kind of strength that can remember without reaching, that can feel without falling, and that can speak about the past without needing to re-enter it. And here's the deeper truth. When you're reminded of a moment that made her feel free, inspired, or safe, you reawaken a piece of her identity that was attached to you, not because you took it from her, but because she discovered it while with you. And that's powerful, because while she may be distant now, those parts of her still exist. This message gently touches them. It doesn't demand re-engagement. It doesn't seek validation. It simply recognizes what was beautiful. That's why it stays in her mind longer than any poetic plea or apology ever could. You didn't ask for a response. You created a moment that doesn't chase her attention. It earns her reflection. And now that you've reminded her of what was real, it's time to speak to what is rare, not in memory, but in her, not about the past, but about her character. Because the next message you'll send isn't about her beauty. It's about something far more meaningful. And once that memory lingers, you guide her attention not to the past, but to herself. Not what she looked like, what she carried. Not what you miss, what you respect. The next message speaks directly to her strength. You know what I really respected about you? The way you stayed calm when everything around you was falling apart. Not all compliments are equal. Some scratch the surface. Empty praise about beauty, style, or a flattering picture online. They're disposable, predictable, and ultimately forgettable. But there's a different kind of compliment. One that stops her mid-scroll. One that doesn't just land in her inbox, but settles into her chest like something she didn't know she needed to hear. This is that kind of compliment. Because when you tell a woman that you respected her strength, not just in happy moments, but in chaos, you're not flattering her, you're seeing her. You're reflecting something back to her that most people missed. Something quiet, something real, something earned. This is where a high-value man separates himself. He doesn't compliment what's obvious. He acknowledges what's rare. You're not speaking to her ego, you're speaking to her essence. You're reminding her that what you found powerful wasn't her performance. It was her presence, her poise under pressure, her ability to keep her dignity intact even when life didn't cooperate. And the best part? You say it without attaching it to regret. You don't follow up with, I miss that about you. You don't slip in a plea to see her again. You say it and you leave it. That's restraint. That's masculine discipline. That's the kind of compliment that doesn't chase a reaction, because it is the impact. And here's what happens next, whether she replies or not. She reflects. She remembers how you looked at her, not when she was trying to impress you, but when she was just trying to hold it together. She remembers the steadiness in her eyes when everything around her was falling apart. She remembers feeling seen. That memory, that emotional anchor will sit with her because no one else noticed that moment. And now that you've spoken to her inner strength, not her outer image, you've raised the bar. This isn't about playing the nice guy card. It's about offering something that carries weight. Because a compliment like this isn't something she files away. It's something she feels again. And that emotion, that moment of being recognized for something that required depth and courage, that's the beginning of something she didn't expect from you. Renewed respect. Which brings us to the next move. Not about what you see in her, but what you awaken in her. And that's energy. Now that she remembers what you once saw in her, it's time to reflect something even more powerful. what you still believe she's capable of. You're not just honoring who she was, you're activating who she is. Crush this day. You're built for the hard stuff, and you've already survived worse. This isn't just a message. It's a reminder, one that speaks not to her insecurity, but to her power. Most men reach out with softness that bleeds into need. They try to comfort, to nurture, to seem caring. But underneath it all is one simple truth. They want something back. Approval, contact, a response. This message flips that dynamic. You're not reaching out to hold her up. You're reminding her that she already stands on her own, and the way you say it matters. You're not cheering her on like a fan. You're speaking into her identity as someone who's capable, tested, and strong. You're saying, I haven't forgotten what you're made of, and deep down, neither should you. That hits differently than empty encouragement, because it doesn't come from sentimentality. It comes from clarity. You're not trying to be her source of hope. You're simply mirroring it back to her. That's high-value energy. It's not loud. It's not poetic. It's grounded. It's masculine in the most fundamental way. It lifts without trying to carry. This kind of message triggers something powerful in her nervous system, especially if she's been surrounded by shallow conversations and hollow praise. It doesn't flatter her feelings. It reminds her of her foundation. And what makes this message unforgettable isn't just what it says. It's what it doesn't say. You don't ask her if she's okay. You don't check on her. You don't offer to help. You assume strength. And in doing so, you call it out of her. That's the mark of a man who no longer needs to play rescuer. You're not in this to prove you care. You're in this to model how someone worthy cares, by speaking to the best in her, without trying to own it. This one line becomes a psychological pivot point, because she doesn't just feel supported. She feels seen, challenged, and inspired. She's not used to that anymore. And the moment she feels it again, from you, she's reminded of how different your energy really is. Now that you've reawakened that part of her, the next message opens a deeper door. Not about memory, not about praise, but about truth, the kind most people avoid. You won't. When you've lifted her up without needing anything in return, you've earned the right to go deeper. And so, the next message doesn't praise. It asks, boldly, quietly, and with precision, what's one thing you've been putting off, but you know you need to do? There are questions that entertain, and then there are questions that interrupt. This one does the latter. It doesn't flatter her. It doesn't tease. It doesn't ask her to open up emotionally so you can connect. It challenges her, gently, calmly, but with conviction. And that's exactly what makes it so powerful. You're not texting to distract her from her thoughts. You're guiding her into them. Most people avoid this kind of self-confrontation. They stay busy, stay reactive, stay on the surface. But when a man asks a question that reflects her inner friction, he immediately becomes someone she pays attention to, because he's no longer part of her noise. He's become her mirror. And you're not doing it to be clever or therapeutic. You're doing it because real connection requires accountability, not just between two people, but within each individual. You're inviting her back into her own integrity, and that quietly elevates you in her mind, not because you told her who to be, but because you saw who she could become and had the courage to ask about it. There's no pressure here, no expectation. You ask, you release. You don't follow up, you don't frame it. You don't circle back to see how it made her feel. You leave with the confidence that the question itself did the work. That's the mark of a man who knows his influence doesn't require presence, only precision. She may not reply right away. She may even pretend it didn't land. But it did, because when the right question comes from the right energy, it lingers. It works its way into her morning, her mind, her momentum. And long after the notification fades, she'll still hear the question. And when that happens, she won't just think of the answer, she'll think of you, the man who didn't reach for her, but reached something deeper within her. That's stoic influence. Not noise, not need, just presence sharpened into purpose. After reflection comes release. And in this next message, you do something rare. You don't deepen the tension. You soften it without ever losing your edge. Had the weirdest dream last night. You were president, and your first law was mandatory morning coffee. Honestly, not a bad idea. There's a quiet art to being light, without losing your weight. Most men, especially after heartbreak, forget that laughter isn't weakness, it's emotional balance. They fall into extremes, too serious to connect or too playful to be respected. But a man who's healed, or is healing with purpose, knows how to hold both strength and warmth in the same breath. That's what makes this message so effective. It doesn't try to impress. It doesn't ask for intimacy. It doesn't lean into charm. It simply offers a smile, grounded in confidence, laced with presence and wrapped in subtle awareness. Because here's the deeper truth. When a woman has grown distant, she expects one of two things, either silence or strategy. What she doesn't expect is ease, emotional lightness, a soft re-entry that doesn't demand anything but still shifts her energy. And that's exactly what this message delivers. It tells her, without saying it directly, that you haven't lost yourself in the pain, that your identity wasn't built on the relationship alone, that you've moved through the fire, and somehow you've still kept your ability to see joy in small things. It's not comedy, it's composure. And the deeper psychology? This type of message communicates emotional recovery. It shows that you no longer associate her absence with your suffering, that you're waking up, living life, creating space for lightness. Not because you're pretending, but because you've genuinely begun to breathe again. That kind of energy is magnetic, because it's rare, and because it reminds her of something she may have forgotten. You weren't just a man who cared. You were the man who made her feel better just by being around. And if that was true before, then this moment, this simple dream, this ridiculous but playful line, will bring back that sensation. She may laugh, she may respond, but even if she doesn't, she'll remember. Because amidst all the heaviness of modern life, the man who offers relief without losing depth becomes unforgettable. And now that you've made her feel something light, you give her one final message, not with a punchline, but with presence, with control, with quiet mystery. And now, after she's felt your ease, after the smile, after the shift, you leave her with one final thought. Not a joke, not a memory, but a message that lives in silence and strength. Got something planned. You'll like it. I'll let you know. Power doesn't always speak. Sometimes it's the silence between the words that makes someone lean in, the space, the restraint, the unfinished thought that leaves a thread hanging, just long enough to pull her mind back toward you. That's what this message does. It doesn't reveal. It doesn't overpromise. It doesn't ask for attention. It simply hints. And that subtlety is everything. Because the man you are now doesn't need her curiosity to validate his next move. You're already moving. You're building, planning, living. This message doesn't serve as a breadcrumb to keep her orbiting. It's a statement that says, you have direction now, and that direction is no longer wrapped around her. That's what makes it powerful. Not because it's cryptic, but because it's composed. You're not using vagueness to manipulate. You're using silence to affirm one thing. You're in motion. And here's what makes it land. Most women, after pulling away, expect their former partners to stay in place, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. They assume you're still waiting, still hoping, still watching her life from a distance. This message interrupts that illusion. She realizes, maybe for the first time, that you're no longer stuck in what used to be. You're no longer frozen. You've evolved from someone who once checked into someone she now checks on. And while this message may not ask anything of her, it will linger in her mind. Because curiosity is rooted in uncertainty, and uncertainty is born from restraint. You haven't become distant. You've become directional. You didn't say too much. You said just enough. And that difference? It speaks louder than any paragraph you could have sent. Now you've said what needed to be said. You've sparked curiosity. You've grounded your presence. You've led with poise. There's nothing left to send except your energy. And that's exactly what we close with now. And now you've said enough. There's no need to chase. No reason to explain. You've texted like a man who's no longer trying to be remembered, because now you command it. Let's close this the right way. You've made it through the silence, through the mornings that felt empty, through the tension of wanting to reach out, but holding yourself back. And now, here you are, not the same man who was left behind, but the man who kept walking. Each of these messages wasn't just a way to communicate with her. They were reminders to reconnect with yourself, to speak with precision, to lead with calm, to remember that even in loss, you are not less. Because here's what you need to hear now. You don't win her back by chasing. You don't inspire attraction by begging. You don't reclaim your place in her life by sacrificing your role in your own. You lead, quietly, intentionally, without apology. You let your presence say what your words no longer need to explain. You choose messages that reflect who you become, not who you were trying to be. And maybe she responds. Maybe she doesn't. That's not the point anymore. Because the real transformation didn't happen in her inbox. It happened in your identity. This isn't about texting her. It's about becoming a man who can send these messages and walk away. A man who no longer needs to be heard to feel valuable. A man who can hold space, not just for a woman, but for himself. A man who no longer texts for attention. He texts because his energy speaks for itself. So now you close a conversation, not because it's over, but because you're no longer reaching down. You're rising. Let her notice. Let her wonder. Let her feel the shift in the silence. You don't need to say more, because now, finally, you've said enough. If this message spoke to something you've been carrying silently, then you're not alone. This channel exists for men like you, men who've been broken, but chose to rebuild. So if you found strength in these words, if you want to keep sharpening your edge, if you're ready to walk this path with discipline, clarity, and quiet power, then subscribe. Join the mission, and leave a comment below to let other men know that you're rising too. If this message spoke to something you've been carrying silently, then you're not alone. This channel exists for men like you, men who've been broken but chose to rebuild. So if you found strength in these words, if you want to keep sharpening your edge, if you're ready to walk this path with discipline, clarity, and quiet power, then subscribe. Join the mission, and leave a comment below to let other men know that you're rising too. You don't need to shout. You just need to stand up. We're here when you do.